I never meant to change everything that night. The scent of pine and smoke clung to the air as I slipped through the moonlit clearing toward the gathering, my pale hair tucked beneath a worn hood. Autumn had descended on the forest with quiet determination, painting the leaves in amber and crimson while whispers of winter chilled the night. The pack's autumn equinox celebration was in full swing, fires blazing in stone circles, casting long shadows over faces I'd known my entire life but had never truly belonged among. I shouldn't have been there. The celebration was for pack members only. Those born with the blood, those who could shift beneath the moon's watchful eye. Not for me. The human girl taken in after my parents' accident, raised alongside wolves, but never one of them. Keeper of their archives, keeper of their secrets, but never truly pack. My fingers closed around the small silver pendant my mother had given me before she died, a crescent moon cradling a tiny star. "Remember who you are," she'd whispered as she pressed it into my palm. "The moon watches over all creatures, Alara, even those who cannot howl back." I wore it always, hidden beneath my clothes, a secret talisman against loneliness. From my hidden vantage point behind an ancient oak, I watched them dance and laugh, their movements graceful even in human form. Alpha Rowan stood tall at the center, his dark hair streaked with silver, his presence commanding even in relaxed celebration. The council members arranged themselves nearby, Elder Thea with her knowing eyes, Callum with his scarred hands, and Nadia whose tracking skills were legendary within the territories. And beside Rowan stood the empty chair, the Luna's seat, carved from pale wood and etched with symbols of protection and fertility. It had remained vacant since Alpha Rowan's mate died 5 years ago. No one touched it. No one approached it. Pack law. Until me. I hadn't planned to join the celebration. I'd only meant to watch for a moment before returning to my small cabin at the edge of pack territory. But then Kira, Alpha Rowan's 16-year-old daughter, spotted me. Her face lit up with the uninhibited joy of youth as she bounded over, grabbing my hands. "Alara! You came!" Her enthusiasm drew curious glances from nearby pack members. Some smiled hesitantly. Others frowned with open disapproval. "I was just passing by," I murmured, trying to disentangle myself from her grip. "Nonsense. You're always hiding in that library. Tonight is for everyone who serves the pack." She pulled me toward the gathering, my feet stumbling over roots, as I tried to resist without offending her. As Alpha's daughter, her goodwill was valuable protection. "Kira, I don't belong here," I whispered urgently. She rolled her eyes. "You've lived with us for 15 years. When will you stop saying that? When your people stop reminding me?" I thought but didn't say. The music shifted as we approached. Drums and strings woven into haunting melodies that stirred something primal, even in my human blood. Conversations quieted momentarily as pack members noticed my approach, their enhanced senses picking up my distinctly human scent. I felt their stares like physical weight pressing against my skin. "Father," Kira called, dragging me toward the Alpha. "Look who I found skulking around the forest instead of celebrating with us." Alpha Rowan turned, his steel-gray eyes finding mine with unsettling precision. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. We rarely interacted directly. Our paths crossed only when he needed information from the archives I maintained. "Archivist," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Not Alara. Never my name." "Alpha." I bowed my head respectfully, heart hammering in my chest. 15 years of living among wolves had taught me the proper protocols, if nothing else. "Sit with us," Kira insisted, gesturing toward the circle of logs and chairs arranged near the central fire. Elena just finished telling the old story of the first shift. Before I could protest, a commotion broke out on the far side of the clearing. 2 young males, Damon and Jensen, had begun circling each other, teeth bared in challenge. Their eyes gleamed with the amber hue that preceded shifting. "Excuse me," Rowan said tersely, moving with fluid grace toward the disruption. In the momentary distraction, Kira was called away by her friends, leaving me awkwardly standing alone near the circle of seats. The night air pressed against my skin as conversations resumed around me, deliberately excluding me from their flow. I took a step backward, planning my escape. That's when I felt it. a strange pull, like invisible threads tugging at my awareness. I turned slowly and found myself facing the Luna's chair. In the firelight, the pale wood seemed to shimmer with an inner light, the carved symbols appearing to move like living things. I blinked, certain it was a trick of the flames. I knew I should walk away. The Luna's chair was sacred, meant only for the Alpha's mate, but something about it called to me, a whisper I couldn't quite hear but felt in my bones. Just for a moment, I thought. Just to rest before I slip away. I sat down. The world stopped. The chair, cold at first touch, suddenly warmed beneath me. The wood seemed to soften, molding itself to my form as if it had been crafted specifically for my body. A gentle glow emanated from the symbols carved into the arms and back, illuminating my pale hands with silvery light. A hushed sigh, perhaps from the wood, perhaps from my own lips, drifted through the night air. I tried to stand, suddenly aware of my transgression, but the chair held me gently in place. Not restraining, but welcoming, claiming. "What have you done?" The horrified whisper came from Elder Thea, who stood frozen several feet away, her ancient eyes wide with shock. Around the clearing, conversations died as pack members turned toward us. Silence spread like ripples on still water until every eye was fixed on me, the human archivist sitting in the Luna's chair that had remained empty for 5 years. Alpha Rowan pushed through the crowd, his expression thunderous. Behind him came Damon and Jensen, their earlier conflict forgotten in light of this new sacrilege. The Alpha stopped short when he saw me, his face unreadable in the firelight. "Get up," he ordered, voice deadly quiet. I tried again to rise, pushing against the arms of the chair. "I can't," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "It won't let me." Murmurs swept through the gathered pack. Elder Thea stepped forward, her gnarled hand extended. "The chair has not accepted anyone since Serena's passing," she said. "It cannot be forced or tricked. If it holds you—" She trailed off, unwilling to voice the implication. "This is absurd," Rowan growled. "She's human." "I'm sorry," I said, my voice small in the vast silence. "I didn't mean to—" "Move aside." Nadia, the pack's tracker and one of Rowan's most loyal council members, stepped forward. "This is clearly some kind of mistake." She reached for my arm to pull me from the chair. The moment her fingers brushed my skin, a pulse of energy rippled from the chair. Nadia jerked back as if burned, stumbling into Callum, who steadied her with his scarred hands. "The chair rejects her touch," Elder Thea said, wonder and fear mingling in her voice. "This is impossible," Rowan insisted, but uncertainty had crept into his tone. He approached cautiously, his imposing frame blocking the firelight. "Stand," he commanded, using the alpha voice that no pack member could resist. I felt the power in his words like a physical pressure, but the chair's hold was stronger. "I would if I could," I replied, trembling now. Around us, the pack had drawn closer, their expressions ranging from outrage to fascination. I caught sight of Kira, her young face alight with something that looked disturbingly like hope. "The human has defiled our sacred traditions," Damon spat, his handsome face twisted with contempt. Several others murmured in agreement. "Perhaps," Elder Thea said slowly, "or perhaps the old magic has spoken." She turned to Rowan. "Alpha, you know the legends. The chair chooses. It has always chosen." "Not a human," he replied through clenched teeth. "Never a human." Yet as he spoke, the chair's glow intensified, bathing me in silver light that seemed to sink beneath my skin. The crescent moon pendant beneath my shirt grew warm against my chest. "Try to remove her," Rowan ordered Jensen, who stepped forward eagerly. The young wolf grasped both my arms, pulling with his supernatural strength. Pain shot through my shoulders as he lifted, but the chair rose with me, somehow attached to my body. Jensen released me abruptly, and I fell back into the seat with a gasp. Silence descended once more, heavier than before. "What does this mean?" someone whispered from the crowd. Elder Thea's weathered face creased in a smile that held secrets older than any present. "It means change is coming to the pack," she said. "The chair has chosen." "I didn't ask for this," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I don't want it. Rowan's eyes locked with mine, searching for deception, for manipulation, for anything that would explain away what was happening. Finding none, his expression shifted subtly. "Council meeting," he announced abruptly. "Now. Bring her." 4 pack members moved to lift the chair with me still seated in it, but the moment they touched the wood, that same pulse of energy repelled them. Rowan growled in frustration. "Can you walk with it?" Elder Thea asked me gently. I placed my palms on the arms of the chair and pushed tentatively. This time, the chair allowed me to stand, though I could feel it still connected to me somehow, like an extension of my body. When I took a step, it slid behind me, moving as if weightless. "This way," Rowan said tersely, turning toward the pack house that stood at the northern edge of the clearing. As I followed him, the chair gliding eerily behind me, the crowd parted. Their expressions had changed, fear and outrage giving way to confusion and, most disturbing of all, a sort of wary respect. Whispers followed us like autumn leaves caught in a breeze. "The chair has chosen a human Luna? Impossible. The old magic has spoken. Everything will change." I clutched my mother's pendant through my shirt, its familiar shape a small comfort amid the chaos I had unwittingly unleashed. As we approached the pack house, a place I had never been permitted to enter, I caught sight of my reflection in one of the windows. The silver glow still clung to my skin, illuminating my pale hair and wide eyes. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. I looked other. Not wolf, but no longer merely human either. The council members filed into the pack house behind us, their faces grim. Kira attempted to follow, but her father stopped her with a look. Before the door closed, she caught my eye and mouthed something I couldn't quite make out. A warning? A blessing? As the heavy oak door swung shut behind us, sealing me in with the pack leaders and the mysterious chair that had chosen me, I felt something shift inside my chest, like the final tumbler falling in a lock long thought broken. Everything would change tonight, including me. The pack house interior smelled of cedar, leather, and power. Ancient timbers stretched overhead in the council chamber, worn smooth by centuries of use, while tapestries depicting pack history hung from the walls, wolves running beneath full moons, great battles against rival packs, and ceremonies I'd only read about in the archives. A massive stone fireplace dominated the far wall, its dancing flames the only source of light besides the eerie glow that still emanated from the chair and, by extension, from my skin. The council members arranged themselves around the circular table, their movements tense, controlled. Elder Thea took her place opposite Alpha Rowan, who remained standing, his powerful frame rigid with barely contained emotion. Callum and Nadia sat to his right, while 2 other council members I knew only by sight took positions on his left. The 7th seat, the Luna's seat, remained conspicuously empty, as did the 8th, I realized. The seer's chair had been vacant for decades. The Luna's chair settled behind me as I stood awkwardly at the edge of the circle, uncertain of my place in this forbidden space. No one offered me a seat at the table. "This is unprecedented," Rowan began without preamble, his voice carefully controlled. "In all our recorded history, the Luna's chair has never chosen someone without wolf blood." "Not entirely true," Elder Thea countered, her ancient eyes fixed on me with unsettling intensity. "There are legends from before the Great Division." "Legends," Callum interrupted, his scarred hands clenching on the tabletop. "Not history, not fact." At nearly 7 feet tall, with shoulders like a mountain, the pack enforcer had always terrified me. Tonight, with anger rolling off him in palpable waves, he seemed even more imposing. "The chair has chosen," Thea replied simply, gesturing toward me. "Can you deny what we all witnessed?" "It could be malfunction," Nadia suggested, her tracker's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "The chair has been empty for 5 years. Perhaps it's desperate." The word carried a cruel edge aimed at me. I found my voice, small though it was in this chamber of predators. "I never intended to sit there. I'll leave if you can just detach it." Rowan's gaze snapped to mine. "The chair doesn't detach. It chooses a Luna and bonds with her until death." His voice roughened on the last word, and I remembered suddenly, painfully, how his mate had died. A border skirmish with a rival pack that escalated into bloodshed. He had carried her broken body back to Packlands himself, according to the whispers I'd overheard. "Then what do we do?" I asked, my fingers finding my mother's pendant beneath my shirt. "We find a way to undo this," Rowan stated flatly. "The pack cannot have a human Luna." "Cannot? Or will not?" Elder Thea asked softly, but with steel beneath her gentleness. "Alpha, you know as well as I that the old magic cannot be commanded, only understood. If the chair has chosen Alara, there must be reason." The sound of my name in this sacred space made me flinch. It sounded wrong somehow, too ordinary for the weight of what was happening. "What do you know of this girl?" Nadia demanded, leaning forward. "Did you cast some spell? Use some human trickery?" "No, I just sat down. I didn't know." "Lies," Callum growled. "No human accidentally sits in the Luna's chair during an equinox gathering. She planned this." "To what end?" Elder Thea challenged. "To make herself a target for every wolf who believes humans have no place in pack hierarchy? To bind herself to a chair that, by your own admission, cannot be separated from her until death?" She turned to me. "Show them your mother's pendant, child." My hand froze where it had been absently stroking the silver shape beneath my shirt. "How do you know about that?" Elder Thea smiled enigmatically. "I am old enough to remember things others have forgotten. The pendant, please." With trembling fingers, I pulled the silver chain from beneath my collar, letting the crescent moon and star pendant rest against my collarbone. In the firelight, it seemed to gleam with the same silvery luminescence as the chair. A collective intake of breath swept around the table. Rowan took an involuntary step forward, his eyes fixed on the small silver shape. "That's not possible," he whispered. "What?" I clutched the pendant defensively. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died." "Your mother," Rowan repeated, as if testing the words. "The woman who died in the car accident at the edge of our territory 15 years ago." I nodded, confused by his sudden interest. The pack had taken me in after finding me beside the wreckage, the sole survivor. An act of mercy, or so I'd always believed, prompted by Serena, Rowan's mate, who couldn't bear to see a child orphaned. "Her name was Claire," I offered, unsure why it suddenly mattered. "Claire Monroe." Elder Thea's weathered face creased in a knowing smile. "Monroe. Of course." She turned to the council. "The last seer of the Northern Packs was named Monroe, Valeria Monroe. She disappeared 40 years ago, severing her ties with all wolfkind." "My mother wasn't a seer," I protested. "She was human, like me. The seer bloodline has always walked the boundary between human and wolf," Elder Thea explained gently. "Not shifters, but not entirely human either. They carried the old magic in their veins, the ability to see beyond the physical world, to commune with the moon herself. That bloodline died out," Callum insisted. "Or it went into hiding," Elder Thea countered. She gestured to my pendant. "That is the symbol of the seer, the crescent that watches, the star that guides. No ordinary jeweler crafted that pendant, child. It is an artifact of our kind, passed down through generations of Monroe seers." The pendant felt suddenly heavier against my skin, weighted with implications I couldn't fully grasp. "But I can't see anything special. I've never had visions or whatever seers are supposed to have." "The gift often awakens with trauma," Elder Thea said gently. "Or with a catalyst." Her gaze shifted meaningfully to the chair that still hovered near me, connected by whatever strange magic had activated when I sat in it. Alpha Rowan had gone very still, his expression unreadable. "If what you're suggesting is true," he said finally, "then Alara is the rightful seer of the pack," Elder Thea finished. "And possibly more, if the chair's choice is any indication." The implications hung in the air like smoke, too dense to wave away. If I was descended from seers, if my mother had been one, then my presence in the pack wasn't just chance. It wasn't just mercy that had saved me from foster care after my parents' deaths. "I don't understand," I said, my voice small in the vast silence. "If my mother was connected to the pack, why raise me as an outsider? Why keep this from me?" Rowan and Elder Thea exchanged a look laden with unspoken history. "Politics," Nadia said bluntly, breaking the tension. The seer bloodline was controversial even before Valeria disappeared. Some believed they had too much influence over pack decisions. Some believed they should be eliminated entirely. Callum added darkly. A chill ran through me. Are you saying my parents' accident was no accident? Elder Thea finished softly. If Claire Monroe was indeed Valeria's daughter, returning to pack territories after so long in hiding, there would have been those who saw her as a threat. Rowan's jaw tightened. This is all speculation. We have no proof that Alara's mother was connected to the seer bloodline beyond a pendant that could be coincidence. The chair, Elder Thea reminded him. The Luna's chair has never chosen wrongly. If it recognized something in Alara, seer blood perhaps, or some other quality needed by the pack, we must consider the possibility that this is no mistake. It's impossible, Rowan insisted, but with less conviction than before. His gaze traveled from my face to the pendant to the glowing chair and back. A human Luna. Not entirely human, Elder Thea corrected gently, not if she carries the Monroe blood. The council room fell silent, except for the crackling of the fire. Outside, I could hear the continued sounds of celebration, music and laughter that seemed to belong to another world entirely. In here, history and destiny were being rewritten around me, without my consent or understanding. What happens now? I asked, needing to break the oppressive silence. Now, Elder Thea said, rising from her seat with surprising agility for one so ancient. We must consult the archives. If Ilara is indeed of the Monroe line, there may be records that could confirm it. The archives are my responsibility, I said automatically, then flinched as all eyes turned to me. I mean, I know every document in the collection. If there's information about the Monroe seers, I would have seen it. Not necessarily, Elder Thea said with a cryptic smile. Some records are hidden from all eyes save those meant to find them. The old magic protects its own secrets. Rowan straightened. Decision made. We'll convene again at dawn. Thea, take Alara to the archives and see what you can discover. The rest of you, return to the celebration, but speak of this to no one. Until we understand what's happening, we maintain the appearance of normalcy. The council members rose, bowing their heads slightly to their alpha before filing out. Only Callum lingered, his massive frame blocking the doorway. And if she is what the old woman claims? He asked Rowan quietly. What then? Rowan's steel-gray eyes found mine across the room. Then we face a choice no alpha has faced in 5 generations. The pack won't accept a human Luna, Callum pressed. No matter her bloodline, the pack will accept what I decide, Rowan replied, and though his voice remained level, power resonated in each syllable. Callum bowed his head and departed, leaving me alone with Rowan and Elder Thea. The Luna's chair still hovered near me, its soft glow illuminating the tension etched in Rowan's features. Come, child, Elder Thea said, extending a gnarled hand. The past awaits us in the archives. I hesitated, looking to Rowan. And after we find what's there, what happens to me? Something shifted in his expression. Not softening exactly, but a fractional change in the hard lines around his eyes. That depends on what you discover. I never asked for this, I said, needing him to understand. I never wanted to disrupt the pack. None of us choose our blood or our fate, he replied, but we all must live with the consequences of both. With that cryptic statement, he strode past me and out of the council chamber, leaving me alone with Elder Thea and the softly glowing chair. The old woman watched him go, a knowing look in her ancient eyes. He fears change, she said quietly. But the moon brings change whether we welcome it or not. Seasons turn, packs evolve, power shifts. She turned her penetrating gaze to me. And sometimes the least likely vessel carries the greatest hope. I'm not a vessel, I protested. I'm just me. Oh, child. Elder Thea's smile held centuries of secrets. You have never been just anything. Not with that moon in your blood. She gestured toward the door. The archives await, and perhaps at long last so do answers. As I followed her from the council chamber, the chair gliding eerily behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a past I'd never known, and toward a future I wasn't prepared to face. Block 3. The archives looked different in the deep night. transformed from the familiar sanctuary where I'd spent countless hours into something ancient and watchful. Located in a stone building at the edge of Pack territory, the collection housed centuries of Pack history, handwritten accounts, ritual objects, maps of territories long lost or won, all meticulously preserved. For 15 years, this had been my domain, my safe haven from the whispers and stares of the Pack. Tonight, it felt like a stranger's home. Lanterns flickered to life as Elder Thea moved through the narrow aisles with surprising familiarity, her withered fingers trailing along leather-bound spines. The Luna's chair followed me like a faithful shadow, its glow casting our movements in silver silhouette against the stone walls. "You've maintained the collection well," Thea remarked, breathing deeply of the paper and leather scents that permeated the air. "Thank you." I reached automatically for the catalog ledger that rested on my desk. "What exactly are we looking for? I've never found records specifically labeled for Sears or the Monroe line." "You wouldn't have," Thea replied. "The most important secrets aren't kept in ledgers or labeled for casual discovery." She moved to the back wall where the oldest texts were stored in climate-controlled cabinets. "Bring the chair closer." I stepped forward, the chair sliding with me. Its silver glow strengthened as we approached the ancient wall, illuminating hairline cracks in the stonework that I'd never noticed before. "The light reveals what has been hidden," Thea murmured. She pressed her palm against the wall, her eyes closing in concentration. "Place your hand beside mine, child. Let the chair's magic flow through you." Hesitantly, I placed my palm against the cool stone. Immediately, warmth flowed up my arm like liquid sunlight, pooling beneath my skin. The cracks in the stonework began to glow with the same silvery light as the chair, forming an intricate pattern, a crescent moon embracing a star. "The seer's mark," Thea whispered, reverence in her ancient voice, precisely where Valeria said it would be. The stone shifted beneath our hands, grinding softly as a section of the wall receded and slid aside, revealing a small chamber beyond. The musty scent of undisturbed air washed over us. This space had been sealed for decades. Inside, a simple wooden chest sat upon a stone pedestal. No lock secured it, only a carving of the crescent and star symbol that matched my pendant. "Open it," Thea urged. "It was meant for you." My heart thundered in my chest as I approached the pedestal. The Luna's chair remained close behind me, its glow intensifying until the small chamber was bright as day. With trembling fingers, I lifted the chest's lid. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its cover worn soft with age, and beside it, a silver circlet set with moonstones. I recognized the delicate craftsmanship immediately. It matched the pendant I wore. The circlet seemed to shimmer in the chair's light, the moonstones capturing and reflecting the glow. "The seer's crown," Thea breathed. "Not seen in 4 decades. Beneath these treasures lay a folded piece of paper, newer than the other items. With mounting trepidation, I unfolded it carefully. "To my daughter." It began in elegant script. "If you are reading this, then the time of hiding has ended, and the chair has found you as I always feared it might. I hope to spare you this burden, to give you a life untouched by Pack politics and the weight of visions. Forgive me for my silence, for the truths I kept hidden even as I raised you among humans, far from your heritage. You are the last of the Monroe line, descended from the original seers who helped forge the Pack alliances centuries ago. Our bloodline carries the old magic, the ability to see beyond the veil between worlds, to communicate with the moon herself, to glimpse what might be and what must never come to pass. This gift is both blessing and curse. It is why I fled the Pack territories 40 years ago, why I changed my name from Valeria Monroe to Claire Wilson, why I married your father, a good man who knew what I was and loved me regardless. It is also why we returned when you were 5, though I knew the risk. Some visions cannot be ignored, no matter how desperately one wishes to. The accident that took us from you was no accident. There are those who fear the seer's power, who would extinguish our bloodline to ensure their own ambitions go unchallenged. I knew the risk in returning, but the vision was clear. You were needed here. The journal contains our family history and the techniques to control the visions that will come. The circlet will help focus your abilities when the time is right. Trust Elder Thea if she still lives. Trust your instincts, and above all, trust the chair if it has chosen you. The Luna's chair was crafted by the first Monroe seer, imbued with magic that recognizes what must be, not merely what is. If it has accepted you, then you are exactly where fate demands, regardless of what others might believe. I am sorry for the burden this places on your shoulders. Know that I loved you more than vision or duty or pack. Remember who you are, Elara Monroe. The moon watches over all her children, but some she entrusts with her secrets. Your mother, always, Valeria, Claire. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. The words confirmed what my heart had always suspected, that I belonged nowhere, caught between worlds, not fully human, not wolf, but something else entirely. The outsider status I'd always felt wasn't just pack prejudice, it was the price of a bloodline I'd never known I carried. She knew, I whispered, looking up at Elder Thea. She knew she might die by returning here. Yet she came anyway. Thea nodded gravely. Valeria's gift of foresight was the strongest I'd ever witnessed. If she saw that you were needed here, then the vision must have been compelling indeed. Needed for what? I asked, frustration bleeding into my voice. To be treated as an outsider for 15 years, to accidentally sit in a chair that now won't let me go, to bring change when change is needed most. Thea replied, her ancient eyes holding mine steadily. The pack has grown rigid in its isolation, suspicious of the outside world. Rowan leads with strength, but lacks vision since Serena's death. The territories face new threats. Human development encroaching on our borders. Rival packs forming alliances against us. Hunters using technologies we barely understand. She gestured to the journal and circlet. Your mother saw something crucial in your future here. Something worth dying for. I ran my fingers over the leather journal, feeling the imprint of my mother's hands in the worn cover. And if I don't want this responsibility? If I just want to go back to my cabin and my normal life? Thea's laugh was gentle but without pity. Child, that option vanished the moment the chair chose you. There is no going back, only forward, into whatever future awaits. I placed the letter carefully on top of the journal, then lifted both from the chest. The circlet I left untouched, unwilling to accept that particular symbol just yet. We should return, Thea said, glancing toward the archive entrance. Dawn approaches, and the council will reconvene. As we emerged from the hidden chamber, the wall grinding closed behind us, I noticed a figure silhouetted in the archive doorway. Alpha Rowan stood watching us, his powerful frame tense with unreadable emotion. You found something, he said. Not a question. I clutched the journal to my chest. My mother's words, confirmation of what Elder Thea suspected. He stepped into the archive, the predator's grace evident in each measured movement. And what did Valeria Monroe have to say to her daughter after all these years? Something in his tone made me hesitate. Not merely curiosity. There was an edge of something darker. You knew her, I realized suddenly. Before she left the pack, a muscle ticked in his jaw. I knew Valeria. Yes, everyone did. She was the pack seer during my father's time as Alpha. And when she returned, I pressed, sensing there was more to the story. I was newly mated to Serena, just beginning my time as Alpha, he replied, his voice carefully controlled. Valeria came to the border with you and your father. She requested sanctuary, claiming she had information vital to pack security. His eyes hardened at the memory. My father had been dead barely a month. The transition of power was contentious. Her arrival sparked rumors that she'd returned to influence the succession. But you granted her request, I said. Serena insisted, he corrected. She believed Valeria's warnings about threats gathering beyond our borders. I was less convinced. The implication hung heavy in the air between us. If Rowan had doubted my mother's visions, had perhaps seen her as a political threat during his ascension to Alpha, are you suggesting my mother's accident? I couldn't finish the thought. I'm suggesting nothing, he replied sharply. Merely stating facts. Valeria and your father died when their car went off the mountain road during a storm. You survived. Serena insisted we honor Valeria's bloodline by taking you in, despite the complications it presented. Complications, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Is that what I've been all these years? A complication? Something flickered across his expression. Regret, perhaps, or memory. You were a child with dangerous heritage at a volatile time. The safest place for you was on the periphery of pack life. Safe for whom? I challenged. Newfound courage rising from the revelation of my true heritage. For me? Or for your position as Alpha? Elder Thea inhaled sharply at my boldness, but Rowan merely held my gaze, neither confirming nor denying my accusation. The council awaits, he said finally, turning toward the door. Bring what you've discovered. The chair glided after me as I followed him from the archives into the gray light of early dawn. The celebration had ended hours ago, leaving the clearing deserted save for a few pack members clearing away the remnants of the feast. They stared openly as we passed, their eyes tracking the eerie movement of the Luna's chair that still followed me like a faithful pet. The council chamber looked different in daylight, less mystical, more functional. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. The council members were already assembled, faces grave with lack of sleep and the weight of what was to be decided. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, the chair sliding into position behind me. On the table before me, I placed my mother's journal and letter. My mother was Valeria Monroe, I stated, my voice stronger than I expected. The last seer of the Northern Packs. She hid among humans for decades before returning here when I was 5 years old. I touched my pendant, drawing strength from its familiar shape. She knew the risk in coming back, yet did so because she foresaw that I would be needed here. Callum snorted derisively. Convenient prophecy. She died for it, I replied sharply. There's nothing convenient about that. Elder Thea stepped forward, placing a gnarled hand on the journal. Valeria's gift was genuine. If she believed her daughter had a crucial role to play in the Pack's future, we would be fools to dismiss it. Even if the girl is Monroe's daughter, Nadia interjected. It doesn't explain the chair's behavior. She has seer blood, perhaps, but the Luna's chair is meant for the Alpha's mate, not a seer. All eyes turned to Rowan, who stood with his back to the fireplace, face impassive. Unless, Elder Thea said into the weighted silence, the chair sees what we cannot. The future, not merely the present. The implication hung in the air like smoke, suffocating, impossible to ignore. That's absurd, Callum growled. The Alpha cannot be matched to a human, even one with seer blood. The Pack would never accept it. The chair has already accepted it, Thea countered, and the chair has never chosen wrongly in 3 centuries. I felt sick, caught in currents of politics and prophecy I'd never asked to navigate. I have no desire to be anyone's mate, I said firmly, especially not someone who's treated me as an unwelcome obligation for 15 years. Rowan's eyes snapped to mine, storm gray and suddenly intense. You know nothing of obligation, girl, or of what I have or haven't done regarding your presence here. I know I was kept at arm's length from pack life, I replied, anger giving me courage. Tolerated but never welcomed. Is that how you treat someone your mate insisted on saving? A dangerous stillness settled over Rowan's powerful frame. Serena had a tender heart. She believed your mother's warnings and insisted we honor her sacrifice by protecting you, but protection doesn't require integration. Some bloodlines are too volatile to risk exposing to pack life without proper preparation. So you admit you feared what I might become? I pressed. I exercised caution, he corrected. A luxury I no longer have, it seems. He gestured to the glowing chair that still hovered near me. The old magic has forced our hand. Now we must decide how to proceed. The council debate raged for hours as morning stretched into afternoon. Proposals were made and rejected, ancient laws cited and contested. Through it all, I sat silently with my mother's journal in my lap, the Luna's chair a constant presence at my side, its glow having faded to a subtle shimmer in the daylight. The solution is simple, Callum insisted for the 3rd time, his massive fists clenched on the table. We perform the rite of severance. It was used once before when a Luna was found. Unsuitable. His eyes flickered to me with barely disguised contempt. The woman died, Elder Thea reminded him sharply. The chair's magic cannot be broken without consequence. Perhaps the consequences are worth facing, Nadia suggested, her tracker's eyes cold and calculating. One life weighed against pack stability. We are not sacrificing anyone, Rowan growled. speaking for the first time in nearly an hour. The authority in his voice silenced the room instantly. The chair chose. We must deal with the reality before us. And what reality is that exactly? I asked, finding my voice at last. Because from where I sit, or rather, where this chair allows me to sit, it seems I've gone from tolerated outsider to either future Luna or sacrifice in the span of a single night. I met his gaze steadily. Neither option was ever mine to choose. Something shifted in his expression, not softening exactly, but a fractional easing of the hard lines around his eyes. Few of us choose our fate, Ilara. We merely navigate the currents we're given. The sound of my name on his lips sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. It was the first time he'd used it directly, without title or distance. Then let me navigate mine, I replied, lifting my chin. This is my heritage, my mother's legacy. I laid a hand on the journal. Let me study what she left behind. Perhaps there are answers here that could resolve this without drastic measures. Elder Thea nodded approvingly. Wisdom beyond your years, Valeria would be proud. Rowan considered for a long moment, his steel-gray eyes never leaving mine. Finally, he straightened. The council is adjourned until moonrise. Ilara will have until then to search for alternatives in her mother's writings. And if she finds none? Callum pressed. Then we reconvene and make decisions based on pack law and necessity, Rowan replied tersely. He turned to me. You'll remain in the pack house until this is resolved. For your safety. I recognized the diplomatic phrasing for what it was. House arrest. Prettied up with concern. My cabin has everything I need for research. Your cabin is at the edge of pack territory, far from protection should anyone decide to resolve our dilemma independently, he countered, a dangerous edge to his voice that wasn't directed at me, but at any who might consider taking matters into their own hands. I acquiesced with a slight nod, recognizing the wisdom in his caution, if not the method of its delivery. The council members filed out, leaving me alone with Elder Thea and Rowan. I'll show you to a room, Thea said, rising stiffly from her seat. There's one in the east wing that should serve. Rowan shook his head. The seer's quarters. They've been empty since Valeria left, but they remain intact. His jaw tightened fractionally. It seems fitting, given the circumstances. A shadow crossed Thea's ancient face. Are you certain? Those rooms have been sealed for decades. Open them, Rowan commanded, though the words seemed to cost him something. He strode toward the door but paused at the threshold, glancing back at me. Whatever answers you seek, Ilara, find them quickly. The pack grows restless with uncertainty, and restless wolves are dangerous. With that warning lingering in the air, he departed, leaving me with Elder Thea and a growing sense of dread. Come, child, the old woman said gently. Your mother's quarters await you. I followed her through corridors I'd never seen, the chair gliding silently behind us. Pack members we passed pressed themselves against walls to avoid touching it, their expressions ranging from awe to outright hostility. Word had spread, it seemed, of the human girl who'd defied pack hierarchy by sitting in the sacred chair. The seer's quarters were located in a small tower adjoining the pack house. A spiral staircase led to a heavy wooden door sealed with symbols I recognized from my studies. Protection runes, meant to ward against both physical and spiritual intrusion. Only blood can open it now, Thea said, gesturing to a small depression in the center of the door. Valeria ensured her sanctuary would remain inviolate until her return, or yours. Hesitantly, I pressed my palm against the depression. A sharp pain lanced through my hand as hidden needles pricked my skin, drawing blood. The crimson droplets seemed to vanish into the wood, and the symbols carved into the door flared briefly with silver light. Then, with a soft click, the door swung inward. The scent of dried herbs and old books greeted us, remarkably preserved despite the decades of abandonment. Dust motes danced in the shafts of afternoon sunlight that streamed through tall windows. The circular room was beautiful in its simplicity. A carved wooden bed draped with faded blue coverings, bookshelves lining the curved walls, a writing desk positioned to catch the morning light, and a small sitting area near a fireplace. A narrow door led to what appeared to be a private bathing chamber, Most striking, however, was the ceiling, painted with constellations that seemed to shimmer and move in the changing light, centered around a silver crescent moon that dominated the dome. "She loved the stars," I whispered, memories stirring of nights spent on our roof as my mother pointed out constellations, teaching me their names and stories. "All seers do," Thea replied. "The heavens speak to those with the gift to listen." I moved to the writing desk, where a quill still rested in a long-dried inkwell. Beside it lay a leather-bound book, similar to the journal we'd found in the hidden chamber. This one, however, appeared to be a daily record rather than a legacy document. "I'll leave you to your research," Thea said, backing toward the door. "Someone will bring food shortly. If you need anything..." "Thank you," I said, already distracted by the treasures surrounding me, evidence of the mother I'd known but never truly understood. When the door closed behind Thea, I sank into the chair at the desk, acutely aware of the Luna's chair that still hovered nearby, its presence a constant reminder of my precarious position. I placed my mother's legacy journal before me, then reached for the diary that had waited decades for discovery. Hours passed as I immersed myself in Valeria Monroe's world. Her daily observations of pack life, her growing concerns about factions forming after the old Alpha's death, her detailed accounts of visions that came with increasing frequency and urgency. The writing was remarkable in its clarity and foresight, predicting political shifts within the pack that had indeed come to pass long after her departure. Most compelling were the entries regarding her decision to flee. March 15th, 1985. The vision came again last night, more vivid than before. Blood on snow, the Alpha crown shattered, wolves turning against their own. And at the center of it all, a pale-haired child with the seer's mark upon her brow. My child, though I have yet to conceive her. I have seen her face so clearly, seen her standing between warring factions, seen her hand joined with another's as moonlight bathes them both. Rowan grows more volatile as his father weakens. The young wolf has strength and loyalty, but lacks the temperance that leadership demands. If the old Alpha dies now, before Rowan finds balance, the factions would destroy each other. And somewhere in that future, my unborn daughter would stand in peril, chosen for a role I cannot yet discern. I must leave before it's too late. Find a life far from pack politics. Perhaps then I can change what I've seen. I sat back, rubbing my tired eyes as pieces began fitting together. My mother had fled to protect me, a daughter not yet born, from a destiny she foresaw and feared. Yet years later, she'd returned. Knowing the risk, but compelled by some greater vision. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Enter," I called, expecting another servant with food. Instead, Kira slipped into the room, her young face alight with curiosity and something that looked like hope. She carried a tray laden with bread, cheese, and fruit. "I volunteered to bring your dinner," she explained, setting the tray on a small table near the fireplace. Her eyes widened as they traveled around the room, taking in the painted ceiling and the bookshelves laden with arcane texts. So this is where the seer lived. "My mother," I corrected gently, still adjusting to the strange weight of that knowledge. Kira's gaze settled on the Luna's chair that hovered near the desk. "Is it true? Has it really bonded to you?" I nodded wearily. "It seems so, though I never intended it." "I think it's wonderful," she declared with the straightforward enthusiasm of youth. "The pack has been stuck in the past for too long. We need new blood, new ideas." Her expression clouded slightly. "Father has been different since Mother died, focused on strength and tradition to the exclusion of all else." I studied her curiously. Kira had always been friendly to me, but we'd rarely had opportunities for private conversation. "You don't mind that I'm human? Or mostly human, I suppose." She shrugged slender shoulders. "Why would that matter? The chair chose you. The old magic sees things we can't." "Not everyone shares your perspective," I said dryly, thinking of Callum and Nadia's barely veiled threats. "The older wolves are set in their ways," Kira agreed, perching on the edge of a chair. "But the younger generation, many of us believe isolation has weakened the pack, not strengthened it." She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Did you know there are packs in Europe that have human members? Mates who weren't born wolf but are respected nonetheless?" I blinked in surprise. No, I didn't, because our elders don't speak of it, she said with a hint of frustration. They pretend other ways don't exist, that our traditions are the only traditions. Her gaze turned shrewd beyond her years. That's why the chair choosing you matters so much. It forces them to confront the possibility of change. Change they might kill to prevent, I pointed out grimly. Kira's expression hardened, suddenly resembling her father. Anyone who tried would answer to me, and others who think like me. The fierce loyalty in her young voice touched me unexpectedly. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Thank you, Kira. It means more than you know to have at least one friend in all this. She squeezed back, then rose with typical teenage restlessness. I should go before Father discovers I'm here. He ordered everyone to leave you in peace for research. She paused at the door, hesitating. For what it's worth, I think you'd make a wonderful Luna. You've always been kind, even when others weren't kind to you. The pack needs that more than it knows. With that parting wisdom, she slipped out, leaving me with a tumult of emotions. The idea that I might have allies among the younger wolves was heartening, but the growing political divide she'd revealed was concerning. If the pack was already split along generational lines regarding tradition versus progress, my presence as a potential Luna could exacerbate those tensions dangerously. I turned back to my mother's journals with renewed urgency, searching for insights that might help navigate the treacherous waters ahead. As sunset painted the tower room in amber and gold, I found what I'd been seeking, a series of entries from just before my mother's return to pack territories. April 3rd, 2005. The visions no longer offer choices, only certainties. War comes to the Northern Territories. Not this year, perhaps not for many years, but it comes. Humans with new technologies, rival packs with old grudges, and caught between them, Rowan's pack, isolated and vulnerable because of that isolation. And Alara, my beautiful daughter with her father's courage and my sight, though it sleeps within her still. I've seen her standing where I once stood, between factions, between worlds. But where I failed through flight, she must succeed through perseverance. I've seen her beside Rowan, tempering his strength with wisdom as Luna should. I've seen their hands joined beneath a blood moon while rival alphas bow before a united front. I've seen peace where there might have been extinction. Michael thinks I'm chasing ghosts, risking our lives for a community that rejected me, but he doesn't see what I see, our daughter's future bound to the pack's survival, and the pack's survival necessary for all wolfkind in the coming storms. We leave tomorrow. May the moon forgive me for the burden I place on my child's shoulders. I closed the journal, hands trembling. My mother had seen me as Luna, not just seer, but mate to Rowan himself. She had returned knowing she might die, believing the sacrifice necessary to ensure I would be in position when the pack needed me most. The enormity of that maternal sacrifice threatened to overwhelm me. For 15 years I'd believed myself an unwanted obligation, tolerated out of duty to a dead woman's request. Now I understood that my presence here had been orchestrated by my mother's visions, and purchased with her life. I never asked for this, I whispered to the empty room, to the chair that had chosen me, to the mother whose foresight had placed me in this impossible position. No answer came except the deepening shadows as night fell across the packlands. Soon the moon would rise, and with it, the council would reconvene to determine my fate. And perhaps the fate of the pack itself, though they did not yet know it. I rose from the desk, stretching cramped muscles, and moved to the tower window. Below, pack members went about their evening rituals, lighting lanterns, gathering for communal meals, youngsters playing in the last light of day. For 15 years I'd lived alongside them, but separate, an observer rather than participant. Now, it seemed, I stood at a crossroads that would determine whether that separation would deepen into permanent division, or transform into something entirely unexpected. The Luna's chair hovered nearby, its silver glow strengthening as darkness fell. Its choice had catalyzed this crisis, forcing confrontation with truths long buried. But the true choice, I realized, remained mine to make. When the moon rose, I would face the council with my mother's wisdom in my mind and her courage in my heart. What came after would reshape the pack forever. For good or ill, remained to be seen. The full moon rose over the packlands, bathing the territory in silver light that spilled through the tower windows and pooled on the wooden floor. I had changed into clean clothes found in the wardrobe, simple but elegant attire that must have belonged to my mother. The deep blue dress fell just below my knees, embroidered with silver thread that caught the moonlight like scattered stars. With my mother's journal tucked securely under one arm, and the Luna's chair gliding silently behind me, I made my way through the quiet corridors of the pack house toward the council chamber. Pack members stepped aside as I passed, their expressions a mixture of wariness and curiosity. News traveled fast among wolves. The council members were already assembled when I arrived, their faces grave in the firelight. Alpha Rowan stood at the head of the table, his powerful presence commanding the room. He looked up as I entered, his steel-gray eyes lingering on my appearance for a moment before returning to the documents before him. "You've had time with your mother's writings," he said without preamble. "What have you discovered?" I stepped forward, conscious of the weight of every gaze. "My mother didn't flee the pack out of cowardice or disloyalty," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "She left because she foresaw dangerous factions forming after the old Alpha's death, your father's death." My eyes met Rowan's directly. She feared civil conflict that would tear the pack apart. "Valeria always had a flair for the dramatic," Callum muttered, but Elder Thea silenced him with a sharp look. "She also foresaw threats gathering beyond our borders," I continued. "Humans with new technologies that could detect and track shifters. Rival packs forming alliances against the northern territories." I placed the journal on the table, and most importantly, she saw that the pack's isolation, its refusal to adapt and form alliances of its own, would leave it vulnerable when these threats eventually materialized. "And what does this have to do with the chair claiming you?" Nadia asked, her tracker's eyes narrowed. I took a deep breath, knowing my next words would change everything. My mother believed I would play a crucial role in helping the pack navigate these coming challenges. She foresaw me standing as both Seer and Luna, providing the visions needed to anticipate threats and the influence to help guide the pack toward necessary alliances and adaptations. Silence greeted this declaration, heavy and thick with implication. "You're suggesting Valeria orchestrated this entire situation," Rowan said finally, his voice dangerously quiet, "that she'd deliberately placed you in our midst, knowing the chair would eventually choose you." "Yes," I admitted simply. "She believed it was necessary for the pack's survival." Callum slammed his massive fist onto the table. "This is absurd. We're meant to accept a human Luna based on the supposed visions of a woman who abandoned her position decades ago." "Not just any human," Elder Thea interjected, her ancient voice carrying surprising authority. "The last of the Monroe line, a bloodline that has guided this pack since its founding, and not just based on Valeria's visions, but on the chair's choice." She gestured to the glowing seat that still hovered near me. "The old magic has spoken. Will you ignore it because it challenges your prejudices?" The council chamber erupted in heated debate, accusations and counter-arguments flying across the table. Through it all, Rowan remained silent, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. When he finally spoke, his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Enough." The single word, laden with alpha authority, silenced the room instantly. 15 years ago, Serena insisted we take in a human child against the advice of many here. She believed there was purpose in the Monroe heir remaining among us, though she never explained her reasoning fully. His jaw tightened at the memory. Now it seems both Serena and Valeria were working toward the same end, positioning Alara as a bridge between worlds. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You've lived among us but apart, neither pack nor outsider. You've observed our strengths and our weaknesses with the objectivity that only an outsider could maintain. Perhaps," he seemed to struggle with the admission, "perhaps that perspective is precisely what we need in the times ahead." Hope flickered within me, hope that perhaps understanding could bridge the chasm that years of isolation had created. But Callum was not so easily swayed. "Even if we accepted her Monroe heritage, even if we believed these convenient prophecies," he growled, "the Luna must be the Alpha's mate. Are you suggesting that you would take this human to fulfill that role? That you would dishonor Serena's memory so easily?" A dangerous stillness settled over Rowan. "Be very careful, old friend," he said softly. "Your years of service grant you certain liberties, but there are lines even you should not cross." The tension between the two wolves crackled like lightning. I stepped forward, unwilling to let conflict escalate because of me. "I have no desire to replace anyone's memory," I said firmly, "nor to force a bond where none exists. But if my mother's visions are accurate, if the threats she foresaw are indeed gathering, then the pack needs both a seer's guidance and unity of purpose to survive what's coming." I turned to face Alpha Rowan directly. "I propose a compromise. I accept the role the chair has offered, not as Luna in the traditional sense, but as seer and advisor. The Monroe legacy without," I hesitated, feeling heat rise to my cheeks, "without the mate bond that typically accompanies the Luna position." Elder Thea frowned. "The chair doesn't typically allow for half measures, child." "Perhaps not typically," I acknowledged. "But these are not typical circumstances." I placed my hand on the arm of the Luna's chair that still hovered nearby. This chair recognized something in me that transcends traditional boundaries. Maybe it's time our understanding evolved as well. A strange silence fell over the council chamber as my words hung in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke, each lost in private thoughts or calculating political ramifications. Then, unexpectedly, Kira's voice rang out from the doorway where she stood with several younger pack members. "I support Ilara's proposal," she declared, stepping into the chamber uninvited. "The younger generation stands with her." "This is a council meeting," Nadia hissed. "You have no place here." "We have every place here," Kira countered, her young face set with determination that echoed her father's. "This decision affects our future more than yours. The old ways have kept us isolated and vulnerable. Ilara offers a bridge to new possibilities, new alliances." Murmurs of agreement came from the young wolves who had followed her. I recognized faces I'd glimpsed over the years. Wolves who had occasionally sought information in the archives or nodded respectfully when our paths crossed. Rowan studied his daughter with an unreadable expression. "You organized this demonstration?" Kira lifted her chin defiantly. "Someone had to speak for those whose voices aren't heard in this chamber." For a moment, I feared Rowan's anger. Challenging an alpha publicly was dangerous, even for his daughter. But then, astonishingly, a smile ghosted across his stern features. "You have your mother's courage," he said softly. He turned back to the council table, decision apparently made. "Ilara Monroe will assume the position of pack seer, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. She will have a voice in council matters equal to any member seated here." "And the chair?" Callum demanded. "It chose her as Luna, not merely seer." Rowan's gaze met mine across the chamber, something unspoken passing between us. "The Luna's position remains as tradition dictates, the alpha's mate. But traditions evolve, as my daughter so boldly reminds us." His voice took on a formal cadence. "If, in time, bonds form that honor both tradition and necessity, the pack will address that possibility then." It was a diplomatic solution, acknowledging the chair's choice without forcing immediate action, creating space for the future to unfold naturally, rather than by decree. I found myself nodding in agreement, relief washing through me that I would not be thrust immediately into a mate bond with a man I barely knew, however compelling his presence might be. "Until such time," Rowan continued, "Ilara will occupy the seer's quarters and will be accorded the respect due her bloodline and position." His gaze swept the room, landing with particular weight on Callum and Nadia. "Any who cannot abide this decision are free to challenge it according to pack law, or to seek territory elsewhere." The threat was clear, and not even Callum seemed willing to push further against the Alpha's decree. One by one, the council members bowed their heads in acquiescence, if not wholehearted agreement. Elder Thea was the first to approach me, her ancient eyes bright with unshed tears. "Your mother would be proud," she whispered, clasping my hands in her gnarled ones. "The Monroe line returns to its rightful place." Others followed, some with genuine warmth, others with reluctant formality. Kira bounded over with youthful enthusiasm, throwing her arms around me in a hug that momentarily startled me. "I knew the chair wasn't wrong," she said fiercely. "We're going to change everything." As the gathering dispersed, I found myself alone with Rowan in the council chamber. The Luna's chair still hovered near me, its glow softer now, as if satisfied with the outcome. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for finding a path forward that respects both tradition and necessity." He studied me with those penetrating gray eyes. "Your mother was right about one thing," he said finally. "Change is coming whether we embrace it or resist. Better to shape it than be broken by it." "And the chair?" I gestured to the glowing seat that had catalyzed everything. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The chair sees what we cannot, not just what is, but what might be. Perhaps it's wiser than all of us." He stepped closer, close enough that I could sense the heat radiating from his powerful frame. "The pack needs its seer, Ilara Monroe, and I—" He hesitated, something vulnerable flickering briefly across his features. "I find I'm curious to know the woman who has lived among us all these years, observing much, but revealing little." "I'm not sure you'll like what you discover," I said honestly. "I've spent too long on the outside to fit easily into pack hierarchy." "Good," he replied, surprising me. "We've had enough of easy certainties. Perhaps what we need now is someone who questions, who challenges, who sees with both outsiders' objectivity and insiders' loyalty." He extended his hand, not the formal clasp of alpha to subordinate, but palm up, an invitation. "Shall we discover what your mother foresaw? Not because fate demands it, but because we choose it?" I hesitated only briefly before placing my hand in his. The contact sent an unexpected warmth spiraling through me, as if some long-dormant part of myself suddenly recognized something essential. "One step at a time," I agreed. "The future remains unwritten, despite what visions suggest." As we stood together in the moonlight streaming through the high windows, the Luna's chair glowed with approval, and somewhere, perhaps only in my imagination, I sensed my mother's presence, her gentle satisfaction that the path she had sacrificed everything to create was finally opening before me. Not as the outsider I had been, nor entirely as the Luna the chair had chosen, but as something new, a bridge between worlds, between traditions, between what had been and what might yet be. The journey would not be easy, change never is, but for the first time since sitting in that fateful chair, I felt something like hope for the future, both mine and the pack's.